Hi everyone, welcome to week 4. I'm going to be interviewing Paul in a moment and we're going to be discussing inspired structure. So I'm going to let Paul introduce himself to you and then I'm going to get straight into the questions. So over to you, Paul.
Hi Cynthia, thanks for having me. A little bit about my background. That's finding it a little bit hard to contain my own description of self. But my background today has basically been, I've had a background in business, in entrepreneur in business in different types of industries and project management. I worked a while in the Middle East. I had an interesting journey, met a lot of interesting people, got context about what's really going on in the world. And it's been about 4 or 5 years being pretty solidly involved in activism and on a spiritual path and learning different modalities and that sort of thing. So about having work-life balance between spirituality and activism and what it is that I do in the world to make an income.
Perfect. One of the reasons that I decided to interview Paul for Inspired Structure is because he has a little bit of a different view on structure where it's not as limited and it's more free-flowing, and for me that was something that was more inspiring. So the first question I have for Paul is for him to be able to give you a little bit of his own definition of what an inspired structure is.
Well, that's interesting as well, because I have typically never been a structured person. I've always been very much in the moment, and structure has really meant being too regimented or controlled or restricted for me previously, and I've really been quite rebellious to the concept of that. Now, just of late, probably in the last year or two, really appreciate the value of having a structure. And on reflection of what's occurred in the past, or what we perhaps maybe have perceived as being some of our failures, haven't necessarily been that. It's just that we haven't had a successful or sufficient structure in place to achieve what we want to achieve. So, yeah, that's my experience. Like, it's important. You need to, if you have an objective about it or an intention that you want to have. A lot of people in the spiritual arena have a tendency to sort of have a lot of concepts, have an understanding of a lot of concepts, but ultimately what it takes to achieve outcomes is massive action. Mm-hmm. And to achieve the outcomes for those actions, you need to work out what the end game is and what the outcome is. And then you need to break that down into a yearly, monthly, daily structure for fulfillment and be able to work a way at getting that to happen.
Like a blueprint. Have like a blueprint for a foundation.
Absolutely. I'm getting a bit of a weak signal there with you, but I heard you say blueprint foundation. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So the next question that I have is if you've got any like really interesting experiences around having an inspired structure, maybe something that might be a little bit different to what people would think of as the normal structure that's quite rigid, something that's a little bit more free-flowing, something that's a little bit more inspiring and motivational. If you could share with us either from your personal experience of using it or seeing it used in a certain environment.
Well, when we have a tendency at times to think about structure, it's normally along the lines of business or goal setting or, along the logical side of things. But ultimately, structures for fulfillment are important to have objectives, even about what it is that you want to achieve in all the areas of your life. So I think it's important for us to schedule time for, spending time with family or spending time with children or having date nights and that sort of thing regularly, so that we have time. Linear time seems to be accelerating at a more and more rapid rate than ever before. So I think it's important that we have those structures in place and allocate segments of time to do the things that we want to do, like have fun and spend time with family and loved ones and otherwise, next thing you know, days become weeks. And it's September 2016 already.
I know.
And it feels like it was New Year's 2015 just so okay.
Definitely time is accelerating.
Yeah.
So it's very much so about creating something that will enable you to have balance, I guess, and feel a sense of fulfillment if you're using it either in work or in life. So for me, that's more about what my experience has been with an inspired structure as well, and creating what is an inspired structure. So thank you, Paul. The next question I have is, I guess, if you've got any great tips that you've learned around the best ways to use structures or inspired structures, either in a project situation or in a personal situation?
Yeah, well, when I hear the word structure, I hear framework and I hear compartmentalization. So there's two aspects to that. And like one, of course, is whether, irrespective of the size of the project, and in the area of life around the project, is that working out what the outcome is that you want to achieve, and setting the time frame, and then breaking it down into the times on a daily or weekly basis that you need to be able to allocate to get to that destination. Whether you're a musician and you've got an outcome you want to achieve, and then you have to break down how much dedication and practice you want to achieve to the outcome, or whatever that area. That's the timeline structure. The other structure is the structure that everyone has talents and abilities in different areas, and we don't have everything we need ourselves to achieve the outcomes and the objectives that we want. So we actually have to find other people in our community that have those talents and abilities to be able to utilize and enroll them in the conversation about what it is that we want to achieve. So yeah, there's a timeline structure, and then there's also a structure for people and roles and objectives to be filled, to be able to achieve those outcomes.
Very true. So having a network structure in place as well is something that I've found to be quite important. I know a lot of people don't necessarily know too much about, I guess, networking, but even in the sense of with your community or your family or your friends, just being able to have some type of, I guess, intention of where you're wanting it to go and what it's about and where you can grow in those sorts of areas. The activities in this week cover all different areas of life, from finance, from relationships, from how to love yourself more, and just breaking it down to be able to set the intention and get that clarity around what it is that they're really wanting to achieve, and then having some form of an intention and a way to make sure that they take the actions necessary. Absolutely.
And that's the thing. It's, a lot of stuff can get just parked on the blocks, but it's really, it's all about spending the time to do the research and have the discussions, particularly the people that maybe have already achieved the objectives that you're looking to fulfill on. And then, having the discussions and be able to take massive action for that to occur.
So the final question that I have for you is just if there's anything else from your experiences or from your, I guess, ideals that you would like to share with us about, I guess, having an inspired structure or having some sort of blueprint in place for them to be able to, I guess, live a more balanced life and a more inspired life.
So what I'm hearing around that is around having the structure is being able to move forward. And it's interesting because we were having the preface of the conversation earlier, and there's a lot of interesting things occurring in the world at the moment that are playing out, and there's a lot of interesting energies kicking around. And I think that it's all about our subjective interpretation of what things mean. So when I say the word discipline as well, some people might have an adverse reaction to that, but it's just the discipline of being able to have a commitment to do something when you give your word that you're going to do it. Having the discipline and the ability to be able to continue with it. So there's a lot of interesting energy playing out in the world at the moment, and there's a lot of tension that's building. So I think, and what I'm getting access to more and more at the moment is like choosing what your outcome is, what you're focused on, what's important to you. And irrespective of what's occurring around you or in the world, being disciplined enough and focused enough to be able to be true to your course and stay with the objectives that you're committed to, and not be disrupted, and to be still with what's occurring around you and be focused. That's what I'm really starting to see and learn at the moment.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Mm.
Very huge fundamentals in order for anything even to go forward. I know from my experience that sometimes having the structure doesn't always work, and sometimes you need to be more flexible, and sometimes things need to change, and sometimes it's just about having that intention and that commitment to yourself or whatever it is that you're wanting to happen to create what it is that we're desiring to have created, whether it be an action or a result.
Yeah, and that's where the real test is like having a structure, and it's like, anyone can do great when things are well, but it's like having that structure in place, like a bridge to take you from one place to the next. And it's rather than, something going crazy in the middle of that particular day, or hasn't been a particularly great day to experience, that you still have the ability to be able to, even like it's like, oh, I don't feel like doing that today. I don't feel like going to yoga. I don't feel like going to the gym. I don't feel like keeping my commitment to catch up with my friend. But it's irrespective of what occurs, is having that structure and being committed to what's occurred, irrespective of what the externalization is at the time that you're experiencing.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Well, it's been amazing chatting to you, and I'm hoping and knowing that everyone's going to get something fantastic out of this interview. So thank you all, guys, for watching this interview this week. Peace, love and light to all of you. And you can say goodbye if you're wanting to, Paul.
Thank you, Cynthia. Goodbye.
All right. Bye.
Goodbye.